Hi, it's Bree. Um, I've been wanting to start this new series on my channel called Reviews Day Tuesday in response to the Vlogbrothers. So this is going to be my first one. Um, a couple of weeks ago, I finished reading Wool by Hugh Howey, which is this book here. Isn't it pretty? Um, And I haven't had the chance to do a review for it. I've been up at my parents', which is 4.5 hours away, so excuses. Um, so I'm going to take this opportunity to review it now. So Wool is a post-apocalyptic science fiction book. It's actually initially was a self-published series of novellas, which was then picked up and kind of re-edited and then redistributed as one bind up by Simon and Schuster. It follows a woman, Jules, and her community. She comes from a silo, which is hundreds of feet deep and where thousands of people live. And in this silo, there is an IT department which runs pretty much everything. It's not really clear why they have so much power or why they get to have their own generator or resources when the rest of the silo is kind of suffering. And the main character, Jules, is a mechanic who is really the sole reason in a lot of ways that their silo has been functioning. It's over 200 years old, they think, and she's really the only person who's got that kind of magic touch with it that keeps it running. And when the old sheriff dies, the mayor goes down to Jules to ask her to be the new sheriff. Jules is brought up to the upper levels of the silo, which is all, remember, below ground, so closer to the ground level. And Jules starts rummaging through these case files and all of this information that was on the old sheriff's computer. And she realizes that things aren't right. Something's a little hinky, to say the least, and the IT department has been messing with the screens that show people the outside world. So she's kind of launched into this investigation to try to figure out what was going on, why the IT department has so much power, who's really in control, and why they're still in the silo. It's an interesting read, to say the least. I'm going to start off talking about the things I really liked, and then I'll talk about some of my criticisms. First off, I really thought Jules was kind of a fun character. But more than that, I really enjoyed Lucas, who was kind of the main male character in the book. He's a lower level IT guy, and he's the first person in the novel you see who doesn't really just do what everyone asks, or kind of believe just what everyone says. And that includes Jules. He's independently minded, and he really kind of has a thirst for knowledge about the world. And so I really liked him. In fact, I kind of had like all of the feels for him. I really liked that Howie doesn't try to explain why the world eventually came to some kind of end. And he doesn't try to explain why these societies are stuck, this society is stuck in this silo where they'll never be able to leave, right? That's just, he presents it just as the reality of their situation, and I really appreciate that. I think it leaves a lot fewer loose ends. It doesn't give me that like itchy, scratchy, stretched too thin kind of plot. It doesn't feel like that kind of itchy, scratchy, stretched way too thin kind of plot in that sense. On the other hand, I think that there are some problems, and I think they're largely due to the initial format that the book was in. So, as I've mentioned previously, Howey wrote these as novellas, and they kind of just came together as this big plot, right? They were little novellas all working towards the same overarching plot. But that means that the narration doesn't necessarily always flow well between the parts. Sometimes where one voice kind of leaves off in one of the novellas, and where it's picked up again in the next one doesn't seem to make sense. How he puts in a lot of plot points that are exciting, yes, but that don't make sense within the narrative. This happens more towards the end of the novel. So, it starts really in the second or third novella, and kind of carries on throughout, where there are these really exciting scenes, but they don't actually move the overarching plot forward. I think in a lot of ways, how he's putting these kind of tangential plot points in as a way to maintain energy throughout the novellas. It, however, just doesn't seem to make sense to me in a novel bind-up. Aside from that, those plot points are left in a lot of ways hanging. They're hinted at later in the novel when he's kind of trying to tie things together, but they don't actually tie back in. It's not the biggest deal, because really they're not that important to the plot itself. But it does kind of, I think, detract from some of the world building that he does. The only other thing I guess I could say is that if you are turned off by the first 100 pages of this, I'd suggest hanging in there. The first 100 or so pages are kind of unnecessarily descriptive, a little purple prosy. It does get a lot better. Once you get into the thick of the plot, that dies down a lot. And in fact, it's fairly non-existent through the rest of the novel. But hang in there. Overall, I gave this a 4 out of 5. Good read, entertaining. Not my favorite novel. Certainly not the novel I would go to if I, wanted the entire war story. But for kind of a snippet of what life might be like in this kind of post-apocalyptic world, I didn't think it was bad. But anyway, I'm going to be trying to do these Tuesday reviews every week. But I will see you Friday for my wrap-up. Bye!